one only had to see Xi Jinping when he was at the All China Women's Federation conference meeting, where he was the keynote speaker, and basically told women go back home and have children. It was a little more elegant than that, but that was essentially the message. But it's very significant rollback from the way the role of gender had been portrayed by the Communist Party before that. It was already being eroded, I think. I mean, it's also interesting, if you compare some of the Cultural Revolution posters and images, which often would have women driving cranes, driving tractors in things which had been previously perceived as being sort of male terrains, that's really gone. And most of the representations and images are in that sense somewhat regressive. I think it also relates, I don't have time to go into Carl Schmitt, there's a whole set of things one could say about that. I think the other thing which is dominating and pushing out liberalism is the rise of the idea of the security state, ranging from industrial policy and beyond. But now both China and America are defining their strategies and their policies in terms of security and the strengthening of the security state. And coming back to Xi Jinping, of course, one of his classic comments shortly after he took power about the collapse of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, he talks about the fact, nobody was man enough to stand up and stand against it. So I think, those are really significant changes that have been shifting. Yes, party liberal, it's a misnomer. I know I use the phrase, but there are no liberals in the Chinese Communist Party. And I think it goes back to the framing that I talked about earlier, that whatever we might say about your first point, it is the worldview that's constructed for them to live within. So even with someone like Li Rui, who I spent a lot of time with, or Su Shaozhi, who I knew very well, I mean, they still inhabited that sort of same world. And some things were taken from tradition. You could say the idea of contradictions sort of exists there, plays out there. Not to be too crass about it, but there was an article by Jiang Shigong, who was at Beidar and is now, I think, president or deputy party secretary at Minzu Daxue. Basically, he wrote an article that said, socialism and Chinese characteristics is whatever Xi Jinping says it is.
Jiang Shigong, also a great Schmittian.
Yeah, oh, yes. Oh, very obsessed. Very obsessed. Writes about that a lot. So, I mean, I know, I agree with you. It is, when I was a student in China, of course, it was still in the Pilin Pikung period, and everybody was out smashing whatever they could of the traditional culture. So it's quite a shock to me to see that now. I also wonder, it's also partly, of course, reaching for other forms of legitimacy as people see perhaps erosion of traditional approaches to Marxism and Leninism. I also wonder if it relates to cross-straits relations. It's not something I'd sort of thought about before, but as you said it, I mean, because when the Kuomintang went to Taiwan, they said they were carrying with them the Chinese tradition. And of course, they carried a whole bunch of it off to the Gugong that they built around Taipei. But they were always promoting themselves as they were the real purveyors, the exemplars, the continuers of the Chinese tradition. And of course, the Communist Party was the destroyers of that. Now, they don't rule, of course, in the same way on Taiwan any longer. And I think maybe there's an element of the promotion of the mainland really being that inheritor of the Chinese tradition that is also to try and perhaps woo people across the straits, rather. They're all part of the great Chinese tradition, and that Chinese tradition lives with us now, not with anyone else.